Today's episode of the 7-Minute Security Podcast is sponsored by Arctic Wolf, whose concierge security teams monitor, detect, and respond to cyber threats 24/7 for thousands of customers around the world. Arctic Wolf, redefining cybersecurity. Visit arcticwolf.com/7ms to learn more. You know security is hard, so let's assume we're probably gonna get pwned by noon. But if we all start to get the basics right, we might not fully get pwned until tonight. And live, I think. Let me see. Hey, if you can hear me, please put something in the chat. And this is really weird because we're usually an audio podcast, so I feel like I need to say the audio podcast stuff. Welcome to the 7-Minute Security Podcast, maybe, if you're only hearing me or listening to the audio version only of the podcast. This is a little experiment. Oh, thank you. So Spear Fisher in the chat says we see everything okay. I don't know if I've ever been more excited and nervous at the same time to do something. Okay, thank you for confirming. But yeah, this is a 7MS episode 550. This is Tales of Pentest Fail. I'm Brian Johnson. I'm your friend. I'm your host. And I'm going to blame somebody else if this doesn't go well, but somebody thought it would be a good idea to try to do the show live. I feel like I need to have a soundboard button to play that Bill O'Reilly clip where he's like, we'll do it live, blanket, we'll do it live. But that's what we're doing. And so I thought it would be so fun. I don't know, maybe Spear Fisher or someone can let me know if you saw the pre-roll video, but I tried to treat this like a real quote unquote professional video production, and folks listening only aren't going to be able to see this, but I had this whole pre-roll video set up that it was some footage of me indoor skydiving followed by the Arctic Wolf ad and then rolling right into me talking live. But I don't know if the video played, so maybe as I chat here, somebody in the chat can let me know if that did play. But it just looked locked up on my end, like it was just a video of me. It was a frame of me flying and it just froze. And then I waited like 3 minutes and then it turned on my video. So anyway, I'm trying. I'll iron out the kinks. Who knows if we'll ever do this again. But again, the smart business people thought this would be a good thing to try. So we're going to try it. Okay, I'll have to go back. I suppose I can just look at the playback. And as a matter of fact, I have to stop it playing on this other monitor because it's got like a 8-second delay. But thanks for joining. If you're joining live, the smart business people also said this was not a good topic to cover for our first ever live video episode. It was strongly recommended to me to not do a series about things not going so well on pen tests. And I see where they're coming from, kind of, because, right, it would be natural that if I'm saying, hi, I'm Brian, I'm a business owner, and sometimes things don't always go well. If you advertise that to people, they might be like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do business with that group. But I have to weigh that against just trying to live more open book and show bruises and show scars. And if you've listened to the show before, you know I talk pretty transparently about things that don't go well in my life. And I would rather, it's more important to me that I'm transparent about these things and share them. Because I want, somebody else who might be starting a business or maybe already has a well-established business. I guess I want to press upon them that I think anyway, and maybe this is just me, I like when people are transparent. I like when they talk about things that don't go so well because that helps me feel more human. That helps me be less hard on myself because I am definitely the kind of person that my inner voice beats me up way more than anybody has ever been in my life. And I'm definitely that poster child for if anybody that's not me talked to me the way my inner voices do, I would uppercut them into a snowbank. But for some reason, my inner voice thinks it's fine to just go like, every once in a while, I'll just be like, oh, you're not succeeding on a pen test, or something didn't go well. Just let that 7minsec.com domain expire and go to your backup career, which I don't have one, so I don't know what I would do. But anyway, that's what we're doing today. Going to talk about some things that didn't go so well on pen tests so that you can hopefully avoid some of those pitfalls. And maybe if you did fall into those pits, maybe you can be a little bit more gentle on yourself and not kick yourself in the mental face so much. Okay. Let me just share my screen real quick here. I just want to, I think that worked. Oh, weird. Okay. Oh, Inception. I'm seeing my own video stream with a delay here, but I just wanted to point you, if you're not already aware, 7minsec.com/live will take you to our page with our schedule for everything else. So today we're talking Tales of Pentest Fail. And then actually just a little later today, 1 o'clock Central, we'll be doing, continuing our series on building a pen test Dropbox. So I've had a lot of interest in that the last few years, where we're just walking through what software and hardware do we put together to ship out to clients so that in a perfect world, they can plug those into the network, hit power, that device powers up, phones home to us, and we begin their test. So today we're talking more specifically about the software side of it. So I'm going to give you some tips for creating Windows and Kali ISO files that you can mount in your ESXi environment, and basically just configure the virtual machine shell, if you will, press power up, and these things would just power up, build themselves. You come back in a couple hours, do a couple sanity checks and maybe last minute software installs, and then go bye-bye, dropping you in the mail, off to the client you go. And then we've got some other fun stuff coming up in coming weeks. We do something every Thursday at 1 o'clock Central. So we got Active Directory Defense coming up on Thursday, December 15th. We got another, I just thought no matter how bad this one goes, I'll give one more try to do a live tale of pen test, a live podcast episode. This will be more Tales of Pen Test Ponage. So this will be things that went well during a pen test. So that'll be Thursday, December 22nd at 1 p.m. And then just announced a couple minutes ago, simple ways to test your SIM will be on December 29th at 1 p.m. And that is from a talk that I just gave yesterday for a conference in Minnesota here called the Minnesota Government IT Symposium. And it is a demonstration of free tools you can use to test your SIM to see if it's worth all the money and or time and or effort that you're pumping into it. So it was a paid conference yesterday, and some people expressed interest, so I just put it on our schedule. So all that, and then our past events. You can scroll through all these, and you got the YouTube link to all the stuff. Okay? All right, now I tried to be a very, very professional person, especially since we're adding audio. I'm going to try to not, pick my nose or go into a big coughing fit. I think I finally got over, if you've listened the last couple of weeks, you may know I had lung bursting coughing spasms every once in a while. I think I'm over those, so I think I can get through this. I've got a huge jug of water just in case. But let's talk a little bit about this Tales of Pen Test Fail. And to keep myself on the rails, because I have a tendency, if you didn't know this, to go off on tangents and or sing. Oh, son of a biscuit. And I was so thrown off that my video was janked up. I was going to sing live coming into the episode, and I forgot. So maybe after the commercial break, I will torture you with just a brief, 15-second snippet of music, because that's just, I want to keep the spirit of the audio podcast, even if we're doing video as well. But I want to keep myself on the rails. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about some pen test enumeration stuff that I keep getting caught doing. There are a lot of things I'll show you, like Responder and some of these other tried and true tools that I used to just never get alerts or notifications on. And now my customers are seeing those things coming. So I don't have a magic silver bullet answer to stealth evade all those things, but I just want to share them and get you thinking about them so that it might inform your pen testing approach or your defensing approach going forward. And then I want to talk a little bit about something that I hope will catch on in the public security vernacular. I want to talk about people called FUD sprinklers, fear, uncertainty, and doubt sprinklers. They're related to the pen test fail in that they can kind of sabotage your pen test and make it fail even when testing is already done. So I'll talk about FUD sprinklers and what I mean by that. And we'll see if you can't identify a few FUD sprinklers in your own life. And then we'll take a commercial break. And then we'll conclude with a story called That One Time I Took Down a Domain Controller. This was not all that long ago, and I will probably get heart palpitations just talking about it. It's not something I'm proud of, but it was something that I was just doing run-of-the-mill, bread and butter pen testing tool stuff, and it caused the domain controller to freak out. And actually, since even putting this deck together, I've had it happen one other time, but I seem to be the only one. So I just want to raise awareness and or put a call to arms out to you where if you see this happening, you can let me know. I've got an open GitHub issue about it, and would love to see you add your notes onto that to see if we can't maybe get to the bottom of why this is happening. All right. Well, then let's get to it. So, and a standard disclaimer applies. Okay. You just need to know that this is what you're signing up for. Tangents and singing will be used deliberately and without warning. So if you don't like singing and or you don't like tangents, sorry, not sorry. Okay, pen test enumeration stuff that I getting caught doing. Let's talk a little bit about our good friend Responder. And what I have to keep telling myself is that most people will hear this and not see it. So just forgive me if I'm explaining what you're seeing to people who are audio only. But our good old friend Responder, tried and true tool that is really good at poisoning network traffic in various ways that help our pen testing box capture authentication conversations. So what you're seeing in the screenshot here is a system did a broadcast for a system name called BFOMGLOL. And not that you care, but BF is it stands for Bri Fly. That's my test domain. And this system does not exist on the network, the BFOMGLOL. So kind of out of the box by default with Windows environments, how it would work is a client, let's say, and here's where I see this happen a lot, is that clients are, maybe they had some piece of legacy software installed that is looking for or querying for a server that has retired and no longer exists. So maybe you had an antivirus mothership server called AV01, and then last year you upgraded it and now it's called AV02. And so, something in the config is still looking for that as a server name. So different devices do regular queries out to the DNS server going, hey, do you know where AV01 is? And if AV01 doesn't exist and there's no DNS entry for it, then there's these other protocols that you're seeing on the screen there, NetBIOS, MDNS, LLMNR, where that machine kind of asks the whole broader network, hey, is anybody out there? In this case, BFOMGLOL. And at that point, with those poisonable broadcasts going out to the network, our attacking system can say, oh, hello, nice to meet you. I am BFOMGLOL. And then what you're seeing on the screen is we've tricked that system into starting an authentication conversation with us. We're able to capture the username, in this case, Beverly, and Beverly's hash, okay? From there, we can take that hash, try to crack it, and or pass it if SMB signing is disabled and Beverly has some administrative access over one or more systems. So what I'm seeing, not a lot, but enough recently that I thought it would be worth mentioning on this episode, is I'm seeing that the client has one or more systems that are set to be like honey, I don't know what you call them, honeypots or honey responders, where they send out requests that for machines that they know don't exist, waiting for my system to raise its hand and say, hi, I'm that system. And then they're able to say, I gotcha. Now, again, I've only seen this happen a couple times, but I was thinking about how you might tailor your responder run to avoid this. And I don't know, what I'm about to show you, I by no means do I think is perfect, but I heard from a colleague that they were successful in this. So what they did is they first run responder, and that's what you're seeing in the screenshot. They're running it with just TAC capital A. So TAC capital A means analyze, but don't actively poison any requests that you see. So so they told me, and I think you would just have to really watch this for a while. They said that by putting their system into analyze mode, they could see, and maybe they were able to like timestamp the different log entries in responder. They were able to figure out that there was a honey responder. That's just my words. There was a honey responder out there every 30 seconds on the dot, throwing out a request for a weird system name that clearly didn't exist. I used a couple bad examples just to show you like what this might look like. That a system beacons out for a system called Totes Legit, and then 30 seconds later beacons out for a system called Trust Me. It's probably not going to be those names, right? But he added some time stamping to the log and just figured it was like clockwork every 30 seconds. And so he said it was my guesstimation that was a honey responder system. So then what he did is inside the responder.conf file, which is right inside your main responder install, there's a field in there called don't respond to. And then you can put an IP range or a comma separated list of IPs, and those will be specific systems that your responder does not respond to once you do an active responder attack. So put those IPs in the do not respond to field. Then you can run your responder TAC capital P lowercase v, and it'll actively poison everything else, but not those systems that you put in the don't respond to field. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's definitely something I will look into more. It's funny. It's like, get caught a couple times with this thing, with something like responder, and all of a sudden I'm really paranoid to run it. And I understand it's a good thing, right? When a company goes, oh, we're getting alerts of early warning signs of attacks. But I don't want them to rest too comfortably on a single early detection equating to, well, we would catch all attackers and I'm, dismissing everything else you're going to do. That's where FUD sprinklers come into play, and we'll talk about them in a couple minutes. And by the way, too, just to, even though I know we're, doing this live, please, feel free to drop stuff in the chat. I can kind of answer it for our audio friends. I got a chat message that pops up that looks to be some sort of spam message. So I'm not going to address that one, but we'll do it live. But that's what I wanted to cover on the responder front and get you kind of thinking about. Also, one sec, I would feel bad if I didn't mention on the I will find the link here. Maybe I'll have to look during the break. There is on the blue team side, if you want a honey responder like tool, there is a one that our pal Hacker Novice, who hangs out with us in Slack and sometimes on these live streams, I can't find the link, but I will look for it. And he has a free GitHub project where you can run this little canary pie, and it will do what I described. It will send out regular broadcasts for systems that don't exist. And when it sees a system answer those bogus requests, it can kick you an email alert saying, whoa, somebody's running responder on this segment. So it's pretty cool. All right, note to self. I'll look for that. Next thing is Sharphound. And if you've not played with Sharphound before, Sharphound is like probably the second or third tool I'll run on any internal pen test, because it's really good at collecting all sorts of information about Active Directory and the objects, and how the different objects relate to each other from a security standpoint. So I will, what you're seeing in the screenshot here is I'm running tac C space all. That means just collect all the different things you can collect. And then tac D, Bryfly World, is my domain name. But this is me running Sharphound wide open. So it's like, I don't care how loud this is or what kind of logs it generates. Just ready, set, go. Give me all the information. And in recent months, maybe last 6 months or so, I've had a few more instances where the customer says, oh, we got an alert about that. And I can't remember how it was categorized. If it was like, I don't know if they identified the actual queries that are being run on the back end and those are signatured or what it is. But what I do know is that I've also had pretty good success tinkering with a couple of settings within Sharphound. We've talked about this in past Tales of Pentest Pwnage. But if you just look at the Sharphound help, you can whittle down your collection methods to be a bit more quiet. So there's a tac C collection methods that you can play with. There's also tac stealth, which does stealth collection from the DC whenever possible. There is also tac throttle and tac jitter. Now I found, let me just go to the next, actually, let me skip a couple slides and just put this link in the, let's see, is this going to open up a separate thing? Let me just put this in the chat as I'm talking about them. I found that link, and if you're audio only, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. That page has a really good description of what these different flags and options mean. So for the tac C or collection method, they describe on this page what those things mean. So DC only, I was always a little bit confused about, but what that means, and I'm just reading right from the site here, it says it collects data only from the domain controller. It will not touch other domain joined Windows systems. It collects AD group memberships, domain trusts, abusable permissions on objects, OU tree structure, GPO links, the most relevant AD object properties, and will attempt to correlate group policy enforced local groups to affected computers. So if you just kind of want that, like one of the things I'll do is run a collection, and the first thing I check is my test account. What does it have outbound rights to? And so you could get just that information by doing DC only, right? So it's not going to touch all the other systems and pull down things like session information and who's logged in and who has RDP sessions from point A to point Z. So that's a little bit quieter. So when I've done just the DC only collection, that so far, I think I have not been caught on. But again, when I'm looking for attack paths that might hop 4 or 5 different computers, you have a little bit of a blind spot if you don't actually know which admins are logged into which systems and where you might be able to, steal tokens and those sorts of things. But, maybe for your first run, you could do a DC only collection and just see, maybe that collection by itself is enough information to get you to DA. Good example is on several of the pen tests we've been on, the client has it configured so that domain users group has local admin access to a whole bunch of machines. So we set the wdigest flag on those. We wait for, give it a day, give it a couple days, come back in, use various techniques to dump LSAS, and sometimes we get free domain admin creds that way. So rewinding the clock a little bit, we wouldn't have needed to do this louder Sharphound collection and maybe, set off their alarms that were coming. So something to think about there. And then on the next page, I talked a little bit about what stealth means, because I didn't quite know, it shows that you can add tac stealth to the collection, but what does that mean? This site, and I'm reading right from it, defines it as this switch modifies your data collection method. For example, if you want to perform user session collection, but only touch systems that are the most likely to have user session data. Okay, so that's their definition. And again, here's the link. And then in the same vein, I just looked up the textbook definitions of the throttle and jitter flags. So throttle adds a delay after each request to a computer, and you set that value in milliseconds. And then jitter adds a percentage of jitter to the throttle. So I think the main idea is make the timing of it look funky and random enough that if there are some detections that are, kind of purely time-based or intensity-based, you would just slide right into those. All right, let me just see real quick if we got any questions, comments. Quincy asks, does DC only sacrifice information about what sessions are logged onto which other hosts? Quincy, I believe so. And I don't know, only because the last few times I've tried to be really stealthy and do DC only, I fell into that situation I just described where I had enough from the DC only collection that I didn't even need to look at the sessions to see who was logged in where. But based on experience and that last part that I read, that is my understanding. But I've got it as a note here, as something to really test in the lab to see if the session information becomes a blind spot, which I think it does. Okay. Oh, this one. Okay. Again, more Pentest stuff I keep getting caught doing. This one is kind of an honorable mention, but I thought it was really, I don't know if funny is the right word, but just to give you some context on this, and this is a screenshot from my lab. I never put up, screenshots from real customer stuff. But some companies we work with, it'll be a multi-year engagement. So we'll, come in year one, we'll do a pen test. Year two, often what we'll do is they'll say, hey, we think we remediated all the stuff from year one. We'll re-examine all the year one findings, see if they are indeed tidied up, and then look for whatever is kind of hip, new, cool, and sexy since last year's test. A good example, I think, is within the last, I think it was last summer of 2021, that a lot of the Active Directory certificate services stuff became such a hot topic. So for companies this year that we're doing our second or third year in a row testing, we're making sure we test for Active Directory certificate services, right? And then in the next year or so, there'll be other hot topics. And, we just want to make sure we're always testing for the, newest and most popular and or hanging fruit attacks. So for this screenshot I'm showing, I'm showing CrackMap exec running a remote command execution to just pull down the task list or the running processes and their PIDs and that kind of stuff. The reason I think this deserves kind of a funny and honorable mention is that we were doing a pen test for a second or third year in a row for a client. And between the last year and the year that this test came from, they had really stepped up their game, like removed local admin kind of across the board, put in, instead of like a traditional AV, put in a really high-end EDR, put in a managed SOC SIM solution, right? They invested some serious time and money. And I was like excited and kind of nervous, So I did a lot of the stuff we talk about on the podcast where, do the sharp hound enumeration, enumerate local admin, this, that, and the other. And we found, I think on that test, we did find Active Directory certificate services vulnerability that gave us insta domain admin. And I need to do some more homework on that, because I don't know that I would expect detections and alarms to go off for Active Directory certificate services vulnerabilities, because my understanding is that, what would be logged is just communications that are supposed to happen with that service. So in other words, if there's a vulnerability where Bob from accounting can request a certificate and request it on behalf of administrator, that's a misconfig on ADCS, and ADCS is just behaving like it's been told to do, right? It's like, oh, hi, Bob. Oh, you'd actually like to impersonate domain administrator? Here you go. So I wouldn't, I don't know that I would or should expect that like a SIM solution would be like, whoa, I see, I don't know, overprivileged certs issued or what. But anyway, the client, it's kind of hard to explain some of that stuff, right? Like when the client is like, I think we should have detected that, So anyway, we dealt with that issue separately, but we found some other ways to get to domain admin, and they were using things that in my mind would be obvious to a SIM or a SOC. Like it definitely should have thrown them some alerts, but it didn't, so we're now on our second path to domain admin, and we're kind of purple teaming with them on this. We're saying, here's what we're trying, here's what we found, and they're getting kind of a little bit sullen and downtrodden. And then one of the things I wanted to try to do was an EDR bypass to get a client to call out to our C2 infrastructure. So one of the things I did, and this is again using crackmap exec. So the formatting is CME or crackmap exec, SMB, and then I specified an IP of a client that I was attacking that I had local admin on, and I was feeding it, my username and password. And then at the end, I add TACX space, and then in quotes, task list. And actually, there's a few other flags I think I add to that to sort it by name, and then also show like the process owner. But I wanted to, I didn't know at the time what EDR they had, so I wanted to enumerate that and then just see what else was running on the system. And kind of funny enough, that set off all the alarms and bells and whistles and emails, and the SOC initiated the call tree, and we're calling all echelons of leadership to say that this had happened. And so, on the email thread with the customer, they were kind of like, all right, cool, 2 weeks in and you found 2 paths to domain admin, and then we got this alert, and I had to write back and say, I'm not trying to add insult to injury, but I actually wasn't trying to do anything malicious. I was purely just remotely running task lists to see what the heck was running on that system. And they're like, well, at least we're glad we caught it. And I think what the problem was, or the trigger was, is that it was a remote CMD exe call, I think, or maybe I might have done it with capital X, which triggers PowerShell with whatever command you run. And that set off fireworks from the heavens that came raining down upon me. So just something to watch out for. If this is something you do to just figure out, what's running on systems, I'm going to try some other ways to do this, because it seems like this, these remote calls for CMD exe and PowerShell exe, EDRs and managed SIMs and SOCs are looking at that pretty closely. Let's see, one more here before we talk about FUD sprinklers. Let's see how we're doing for time. Oh, I gotta pick it up a little bit. This is one that I've talked about in the program before. A tool called Power Hunt Shares is the name of the tool, and what it does is it does a ping sweep to all the machine names it finds in Active Directory, then goes out to them, checks them for port 445 or SMB being open, and then fully enumerates all the files and folders and gives you a beautiful HTML report of permissions. And I love running it because sometimes we find old domain controller backups, old Windows system backups. Sometimes we'll find the IT share that has too many open permissions, and it's got installer packages in there with hard-coded passwords in the config files, all sorts of stuff. Now, this one, I want to say I've only been caught doing twice. But what I usually do, and what you're seeing here, is I'm running it with, I think the only option it really has is threads for, as far as intensity, with how many open threads it'll have during its collection. So I have evaded detection up in, that I know of so far, by cranking that threads way down to like 1 or something like that. I think I did. And it made my collection take forever in huge environments. But again, I think I'm going below the threshold of, I don't know, SMB connections in a certain amount of time or something like that, by just making it, kind of like a network scan, right? Instead of just turning Nmap up to 11, you can do some tricks there to make it just be very low and slow and quiet. So look out for that. I mean, that is something really I would love to, especially because I do it on every pen test. I would love if all these services would trigger on that, because I realize some software does that as part of its software inventory. But if I'm the sysadmin, I would much rather put a detection system in place, have it say, oh, Landsweeper or Nessus or whatever was doing all sorts of SMB connections, I would rather know that that is happening and know that my system can detect it, and then say, okay, add a ignore rule to my Nessus scanner, rather than have them go like, oh, we just assume that, port scans and SMB scans will be happening and we don't alert on those, right? Like in my mind, this is weird. This is something that I want to know about. All right, let me see. Any questions? No new questions? Okay, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about FUD sprinklers, and then we'll take our commercial break. And then perhaps if everything goes right, just to keep in spirit of the podcast, we'll come back from the commercial break and I'll do a little bit of a tiny bit of live singing, just because I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice if I don't. Okay, FUD sprinklers. It's not like AI or ML or OMG LOL or ROFL. Hasn't really caught on, but I hope it will. I hope we can identify and if necessary, call out FUD sprinklers. But FUD sprinklers are, to me, people that cast FUD on your pen test results. I feel blessed that I haven't had too many FUD sprinklers in my career, but enough that it's worth a mention in this episode. So as an example, here's you can't see this if you're audio only, but there's a image of a clown and he's saying, we saw you do a DNS lookup to Cali.org. We could therefore catch 100% of attackers, obviously, ha, 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 ha. So to give some context to that, I've been in a handful of situations where we deliver our pen test report. And, I realize some of this could hurt feelings. It could make people feel personally attacked, even though that's never the intent, right? But sometimes the security team gets hurt by the results. And so one way I try to soften that is at the beginning of the pen test readout, I make sure that the report has some accolades in it where, hey, here's some things that we saw that were good. Your endpoint protection, we couldn't bypass. You didn't have DNS zone transfers open. You weren't, no Active Directory certificate services vulnerabilities, right? Kind of, I guess it is sort of build them up before you break them down. But it's also just good, I think, to compliment a company on the things they're doing well. For a lot of years doing this, I was just solely focused like a laser on breaking stuff and where are the holes and just hammer on that. But to make it more well-rounded, I like to talk about the good stuff too. So I've had a handful of times where I get, going through the findings, pausing at each finding, any questions, any this, any that. Nope, we're good. Okay, get all the way to the end. And the room as a whole, if I were to take its temperature, I would say we're at the temperature of cool, calm, and collect. Maybe we're not happy with the results, but we know what the vulnerabilities are. We kind of know what Brian thinks we should do in the next 30, 60 days. And even though it may take some more time and money and might have to bring in other resources, we hands to keyboard, we pretty much know what needs to happen to make this network more tough and to resolve the findings. So I kind of take a deep breath and go, oh, thank goodness. I think this was a successful meeting. And then there will be sometimes someone who's sort of like, squeak, they lean back in their chair and they're like, well, technically, and when I hear that, my blood pressure rises because I know what is about to follow is FUD sprinkling. Whether they mean it to have that effect or not, they are about to cast fear and or uncertainty and or doubt on everything that was just said. So sometimes what happens is, well, now let's think about this. Well, technically, let's think about this a minute. We let your device come into our network and we plugged it in. So, we have really good physical security here and we got locks and alarms and shotguns and armed guards and all this stuff. So therefore, no unauthorized device would ever get on this network. And so kind of everything you did is malarkey. They don't say it directly like that, but they're introducing that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And then the people in the room, especially who are maybe in leadership and not very technical, then they start looking at each other like, oh, is that true? Like, would 7MS not have been able to do all these things? So I have to be really careful, right? Or we have to be careful, because you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, but you also want to be like, well, hold on a second. Let's, before we ever went on this adventure, what we said is that what that physical device does is it helps actually for a more efficient test, because we're simulating that someone would phish you successfully. They would, you say physical security is super tight, but what if they got on your wireless? What if somebody plugs in a device from the parking lot? What about da, 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 right? So all we're doing is fast forwarding that could happen, because there's a very high chance it could happen. Look at the news any day, and the biggest companies in the world are having these types of narratives happen to them. We're starting at that point with one compromised low-level account, and that's where our test begins. So let's not, let's not focus too much on this whole, we brought a box into the environment. That would never happen. Maybe let's just even say physical security is perfect. Okay. But you even told us right before we started this, on your latest phishing campaigns, 1/4 of the company fell for it and gave their creds to, what is it called? KnowBe4 or whatever, right? So, right, the users aren't perfect. So this narrative is still valid. Therefore, the findings are still valid, right? And most of the times that goes over okay. But sometimes they do the double lean back and like, well, technically, and they still kind of, So I share all that because, I just think it's something you need to be aware of on both sides of the table. And I guess it depends on the consultancy. I mean, if I had a consultancy come in and really condescend to me and act like they were better than me, I would probably be the FUD guy a little bit of like, hold on a second, let me defend my these findings a little bit. But yeah, I guess you just need to be aware that they're out there and you need to handle them carefully, right? I mean, that's how I feel, is that, yikes, these are the folks that are, it's like, these are the folks that are paying the bills. Again, don't want to bite the hand that feeds me, but also I don't want to just let my report be dismissed and tossed away. But still, even if I've kind of reset and kind of got everybody back on the same page, you can just tell sometimes people are leaving sort of looking at each other like, oh, well, I felt like, we had a lot of work to do, but maybe we don't, because the findings are sweep them under the carpet. So FUD sprinklers, watch out for them, handle them with kid gloves if necessary. And with that, I think, let me just check to see if there's anything popped up on chat. I don't see anything. Let me see if I can smoothly roll into a commercial break. And then we'll be back and we'll talk about the time that I took down a domain controller. And then maybe I can even sing the Go Pen Testing song for like 15 seconds or less. Okay, so we'll see how this goes. Don't go anywhere. Today's episode of the 7-Minute Security Podcast is brought to us by our friends over at Arctic Wolf. Arctic Wolf is the leader in security operations and has launched Arctic Wolf Managed Security Awareness, a new approach to security and awareness training that helps organizations build cyber resilience against social engineering, phishing attacks, and credential theft. According to the 2021 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, 85% of all incidents involve some sort of human element, dominated by phishing and credential theft. Organizations looking to improve their security posture and minimize cyber risk have an acute and growing need to implement programs that address their exposure to social engineering attacks. This new offering uniquely combines fully managed security awareness training, phishing simulations, and account takeover monitoring, and delivers it all as a concierge service. This makes it fast and easy for security teams, even those without an IT or cybersecurity function, to add a security awareness and training program and receive this critical level of protection. For more information on Arctic Wolf Managed Security Awareness, visit arcticwolf.com. That's ARCTICWOLF.com. Okay, I think we're back. And if we are, here's a little song for you. Well, if you go pen testing, you might have to fight tooth and nail. Go testing, go testing. You might get domain admin, or you might be one big pile of fail. Yeah, testing, yeah, testing. A lot of da-da-dee and a lot of da-da-do. Pen test, Steve. There you go. Check mark. I feel like Mr. Rogers now. Hey, neighbors. Put the guitar down. I meant to do that at the beginning, but again, the video was so freaky. I didn't know what was going on. Welcome back. Hopefully you are back. The video froze for me. I have no idea if it played, but hopefully it did. And I'll try to work out the, the kinks here. Okay, so we're last couple things here. Let me just talk briefly about that one time I took down a domain controller. Okay, and then we'll get you out of here. So these are not screenshots from, this is from my lab. This is not from any real customer. Okay. But I was on a pen test not all that long ago and got to the point where I compromised some domain admin creds. And then I went to use secrets dump like I always do to dump out the hashes from the domain controller. So when you do it, it normally looks like this. And if you're audio only, all you're missing is a screenshot of the hashes kind of trickling out of the domain controller. And at the end of the dump, the very last line of the secrets dump output will say cleaning up, and then you're just kind of returned to a command prompt. On this pen test not all that long ago, the end of my dump looked like this, where it's just chiming along, bing, 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 and then gets stuck. It just kind of sits there for like a couple minutes and then goes to timed out and says something went wrong with the DRSU API approach. Try again with blah, blah, blah parameters, and then says cleaning up. And then I'm just back to a regular command prompt. So I was like, well, that's weird. Let me just use my crackmap exec tool to just validate my creds again against this domain controller. And then it didn't work. It just barfed out some Python mumbo jumbo. And let me stick this link in the chat as well, so you can follow if you want, because I created a Impacket issue about this exact thing. In fact, let me see. I think I've got it up just to show you. I got it up here, and the issue is called "Has Secrets Dumped Ever Crashed a Domain Controller?" So I reported what I did, and somebody did chime in and said the only time I've seen this happen is with an EDR. Apparently, there was a quote unquote feature where if it detected credential dumping, the EDR killed the whole DC to stop it. So they recommended I check to see if there were security products on the DC. So I went to the customer. I asked about that. I also looked in the event logs, and I think it was the system log, there was event ID 1074, and it says the process winInit.exe has initiated the restart of computer name, DC01, on behalf of user for the following reason. No title for this reason could be found. And then it says shutdown type restart. And the comment is that LSAS terminated unexpectedly with a long, gnarly status code. So the customer got back in touch with me and said, we didn't have EDR on the DC, and then sent me those logs that I just read off to you. And that was it. So the person that was interacting with me on the thread said they've had the exact same issue and thought it was maybe EDR, but maybe it wasn't. So just then I did another update 8 days ago to this issue because it happened again. Oh, I should say that the DC one, that was just to keep in the back of your mind, that was a Windows Server 2016 standard. And then not all that long ago, I had it again happen in a single DC environment running a fully patched Server 2019 standard. And for that one, the client was able to remote into the DC, and they saw this big blue message, like a Windows pop-up that says, your PC will automatically restart in 1 minute. And they clicked close, and then the reboot happened. But what was in the error log, in the system log, was 1074, and it was the exact same thing that I just read off to you. LSAS took a big poo-poo. So I just wanted to give you that link. I wanted to give you that background and story, just so maybe I can save you from some heart-related palpitations and stress. Because I'll tell you, I'll be totally honest with you. I did that secrets dump, and then I got the timed out thing. Tried to validate my creds with CrackMap exec, and it didn't work. And then I think I went right after that and pinged the domain controller, and it wouldn't ping. And it was like, I had to text and call, emergency all hands with my client of like, can you look in and see what's happening? And then, they just said, well, yeah, it rebooted, but it came back up, and we did a thorough like health check on it and validated creds against it over and over again. It doesn't seem to have any like lasting effects, but oh my gosh, did I almost go, I think I'm going to go back and work at a movie store like I did in high school, because that was fun. And nobody's whole business tipped over as a result of anything I did. Of course, they don't really have movie stores anymore, so I'd have to think of plan C for my career. But yeah, just wanted to raise awareness on that in case it happens to you. Let me just see real quick. I think that is the guts of what I wanted to share with you. Yes, these other slides just highlight those errors that I already shared with you. So I think that's it. We went a little bit longer. I thought this was going to go quick, but we're at almost an hour. So I'm not even going to bother you with any tangents. I really appreciate you checking it out, the video version. Let me know what you think. I'm going to try this at least one more time. And I don't know, maybe it'll become a regular thing. Maybe it won't. But we'll figure it out. Just to let you know, so we're right about at 12 Central Time. At 1 o'clock today. So if you feel like spending more time with us, God bless you. My wife would go, what? Why would people spend any time with me? But if you do, God bless you. 1 o'clock, we'll be doing DIY Pentest Dropbox Part 2, where again, I'm going to show you how to build some self-building VMs that you could stick on an ESXi box. On the screen here, just to close things out, here's all the links to all the stuff. Okay. So trying to get better at social media, trying to get better at, got a Patreon link. All the links to all the stuff are there. And I will just sign us out with a little bumper video that hopefully that will play. I don't know if any of the videos have played, but if they haven't, I'll try to get that figured out. But really appreciate you tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you sometime. All right. Take care. You've been watching or listening to 7 Minute Security, a weekly podcast focused on pen testing, blue teaming, and building a career in security. For more episodes like this, visit 7ms.us. And for information about our consulting services, visit 7minsec.com.